saw a question if we want you to be on video. We love seeing your faces, but we also understand that midday some of you may be doing things that don't warrant themselves to being on screen, but please feel free to turn on your screen if you'd like. I think we're probably getting to the point where we're about to start. I am recording this meeting because we've had a couple of parents who aren't able to make it. And hopefully that's comfortable for everyone. If you want me to turn off the recording for a question at some point, just let me know. All right, shall we get started?
Yes, we're ready. Would you like us to get started, Michelle, or did you want to say a few words?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I would love to. Right, I used my cue. So welcome everyone. As you know, today we're gathered to talk about the upcoming civil rights journey for your adolescents here at Woodland Hill. I know that there is a lot of excitement and anticipation about the trip, both among the children and I'm sure yourselves as well. I'm thrilled to say that I am going to be one of the chaperones, and I'm expecting this to be a very impactful experience for all of us. Today we're gathered to learn some more about the details on the itinerary for the trip. You'll hear from each of the teachers, and then at the end you'll have an opportunity to ask some questions about our journey. And again, thank you for being here today. And at this point, I'll turn it over to our middle school faculty.
Thank you. Hopefully everyone received the email I sent yesterday with the forms, the medical forms, the permission, the packet, the PowerPoint, or the Google slide that we're going to go over now. So I sent that just in case you wanted to preview it and maybe had any questions about any of the documentation. If you hadn't had a chance to look at it yet, that's okay. We'll go over much of the content today. This is a very exciting time for us. We haven't been able to take this trip since 2019. I've been on this trip twice before, both in 2017 and 2019. And I've traveled extensively with middle school students here at Woodland Hill. And I can say that this trip is probably the most profound learning experience that I have had with students here at Woodland Hill. This is what the students will remember when they're, adults looking back at their time in Montessori school. This is what they're going to remember about their middle school experience. They will of course have other memories, but this is what will live on the strongest. And it's not just the curricular topics that we're addressing today. It's, as you know, the adolescents are a very social being, and being with their friends and having this experience with their peers is really something that cannot be replicated. So it is a once in a lifetime opportunity that we're really happy to offer your children. So I'm going to start sharing my screen now and see if I remember how to do this. All right. So welcome. As Michelle said, today we hope to just go over some general, intercession is a Montessori term for field experience, which we consider this trip not a field trip, but more than a field trip, a extension of our school into the world. So we call that an intercession. Evan will go over some of the Montessori philosophy surrounding why we do these trips. And, these trips are very unique to Montessori schools. You won't find another school setting in the capital region that offers this, such as what we're doing. So logistics, Steph will go over the flight and the hotel information, rooming, all those types of questions. And the students aren't here with us today, but we have a series of workshops that we've already started, some of obviously the curriculum, but we're going to have many workshops through advisory and during other times as well, where all of their questions will be answered. They are very eager. They actually wanted to be here today. So the itinerary and the curricular connections, of course, and then different ways that we could use your support and types of paperwork that we're going to need from you. And as Michelle said, at the end, we'll have a chance for questions. So Evan, I'm going to hand it over to you now to talk a little bit about why we do these trips.
All right, thanks, Cora. Hi, everybody. And to start out, my computer just the other day started doing a little funky, looks like a 1980s video game sketchiness. So if that happens, I'll just turn off my camera and turn it back on, and it's usually good for another 5 to 7 minutes. So Cora set that up nicely in talking about how intercessions or outside opportunities are different than field trips in traditional schools. And off to a good start, got weird. And one of the big things that is different about intercessions or outside opportunities, or what Montessori called Erdkinder, is the scaffolding that goes into it and the connection to curricular components and the real world beyond a one-day or a couple-day but standalone activity, so that we can really tie into some of the themes and bigger picture ideas that we're going into in our program. So the second part of the slide here, Montessori philosophy, the adolescent needs to be part of the real world, part of real world experiences, practical applications of lessons to support greater depth of understanding. Maria Montessori wrote not a whole lot about secondary ed and adolescent education. One of her biggest components was called the Erdkinder essay, or Earthchild essay. And I've just got a single line here that kind of helps set up one of the goals of a trip like this. So this is from the Erdkinder essay by Maria Montessori. During this difficult time of adolescence, it is helpful to leave the accustomed environment of the family. And leaving that environment of the family allows adolescents to start to cultivate some of their own independence, connections to real world issues, skills. So parts of our occupations and microeconomy in our program are also a component of this. And there are all different ways to promote what Maria Montessori called valorization of the adolescent, which is basically valorizing them as a young adult into some of the real world topics, skills, acquaintance with money and budgets and finances, planning. So this trip and these longer intercession trips that we do tie into those as a way to help provide opportunities for our students to have those moments of growth. There's a lot more that can be said about it, but that's kind of a quick overall view of it, is that this is really an opportunity for our students, your students, to get out in the world, to get away from their comfort zone a little bit. And part of that discomfort of being away from familial settings allows them that growth and independence that's so important for this age. And if you have more questions about Erdkinder, please let me or any of my colleagues know. It's pretty interesting. Here for this slide, these are previous reflections from middle school students back in 2017. And I won't read this to you, but I will give you a little bit of time here, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, to just read through and see some of these students' reflections at the end of a trip like this.
Thank you. And as you can see on the bottom of this slide, there's a blog that you can check out from 2017. I'll try to add the 2019 blog here as well. And we will be keeping a blog on this trip that we will be asking the students to write for us. Thank you, Evan. So Steph, let's hear about the travel logistics.
Hey, the parent packet that was in the email had a little bit more detailed information than this does. So if you need like anything additional, it's in that packet. All of our flights are on Southwest Airlines, and we have to arrive at the airport at 7 a.m. So our first flight is this one here. That is, well, I can't, it's the top one there. So that is from Albany to Baltimore. BWI is Baltimore. We have a changeover, and then from Baltimore to Atlanta. And then this flight home, we fly out of Memphis and to Chicago. That's Midway Airport. And from Midway to Albany. We'll be home at 10:45 at the airport at 10:45 when we come home. When the kids come on the first Monday there, they need to have a bag lunch and a breakfast packed with them, but no drinks because you can't have liquids in your bag. They need to bring an empty water bottle to fill at the airport. That way they can, fill it up as soon as we go through security. We're not going to have a whole lot of time to be buying things at the airport, at any of the airports. The changeovers are relatively short, and moving 44 middle schoolers from, if we have to go from like make a connection, we're not going to have time to stop and buy things. So we have been telling the kids to make sure they bring something so that they are fed all day. So the chaperones are listed at the bottom. There's all of us that are on the call: Michelle, me, Cora, Elisa, Evan, and also Owusu. He's helping out too. I think that's good. Here's our accommodations for the trip. The 4 hotels we're staying at. The first one is in Atlanta. The second one is in Montgomery. The third one is in Mississippi, and the fourth one is in Memphis. The phone numbers are included there. If for some reason you can't get a hold of us on our cell phones, which are also included in the parent packet. I think they are on page 2. So all of our cell phones are there. You can call us or text us anytime during the trip. And then if for whatever reason you can't get a hold of us, then the phone numbers for the hotels are listed there. So the luggage requirements for Southwest, we're not allowing students to check any bags. We're going to check some bags for the group. So the adults will have 1 to 2 check bags, maybe 3 for the size group, where we'll put snacks and if anybody has like a large bottle of liquid, anything that can't be put in their carry-on, they can put it in our group checked bag. But the students can carry one piece of luggage, so 1 carry-on bag and 1 personal, they call it a personal effect. That would be their backpack, so their day bag would be their personal effect, and then the piece of luggage would be their carry-on bag. They have to be under 50 pounds. We're going to have some presentations with the students so that they can learn about packing their bags, and the packing list is included in the parent information with suggestions on what should be in the day bag and what should be in the carry-on. Those suggestions are there so that if the students need to get stuff out on the flights, that they don't need to keep taking their carry-on out of the overhead bin, then it's in their day bag, which would be under the seat in front of them. All the transportation we'll be doing on the trip will be on a charter bus. They will need to have transportation to and from the airport. So there is everybody is meeting us at the airport. So you guys will provide the transportation to the airport, not Woodland Hill. We're not taking a bus from Woodland Hill. The rooms are 3 groups of 3 to 4 students, and one of us will be assigned to each room so that we'll be checking in with the students, and we'll have the same groups of students throughout the trip. It'll be the same room assignment throughout the whole trip. So the same 3 or 4 students will be in a room together all 5 days. The food, the lunch and breakfast for day 1 will be packed in students' day bag. And then the other days we'll eat breakfast at the hotel and have lunches and dinners out. Most of those meals are already booked or reserved. A couple of them, we're still working on the logistics. So as soon as we have those all set, then we'll add those to these slides. So they'll be updated, and also the students will be updated.
Just to add on, we have been checking in with the restaurants about outdoor eating options, nut-free, vegetarian options. So we are aware that we have different needs when we go into dining, and we're talking to the students about their preferences as well. And we will make sure that students are getting enough food, and we do circulate during the meals to make sure everyone's eating and they have something that they like. For the rooms, this is a road trip, so we're really going to be, every night in a different hotel. So as Steph said, we will be checking in with the rooms that were assigned. Each chaperone gets, I think, 2 or 3 rooms. So we'll just be offering our phone each night to make sure we ask each student every day at the end of our travels if they would like to call home. So just be reassured that we are doing that, whether they call or not. And if you would like to speak to them, you do have our cell phone numbers. We are helping them to make a plan with their roommates about showering and making sure that they're staggering that and that they have a plan in the morning or have a plan at night. We're talking to them about making sure that they keep their suitcase neat and that they're not sprawling all over the room because we're leaving in the morning. We're checking underneath the beds and the closets with them to make sure that they don't leave anything behind, but please, reinforce all of this with your students at home. I know a lot of our students are well-traveled, but we are, it's the first time being away from their parents likely for this long with their schoolmates, and we are moving frequently. So it is a lesson in an executive functioning that we're trying to teach along the way. So we're going to start talking about the day-to-day itinerary. So I'll do the first 2 days. We have started working with the students on this itinerary already. So each student has a topic that they've been researching that we're going to encounter along the way. And hopefully each student will have an opportunity to read what they have written. Each student is writing about 1 to 2 paragraphs about their topic. It will be included in our trip journal. So we provide each student with a journal. They're designing the cover and they're helping out with the contents. It will have all of this type of information in it. We'll go over that a little bit later, but everything that they're writing will be inside our journal. So when we arrive at the airport, our charter bus will greet us and we will make our way over to the King Center, which is really all we will have time for in the afternoon, but it's a fantastic learning experience. So there's a visitor center, the Ebenezer Baptist Church. I have linked the history of that church here if you're interested. It's the King family church that goes back generations, and the King family is still affiliated with that church. It's where the funeral, Martin Luther King Jr.'s funeral took place and where he was a pastor until his passing with his father. We're going to go to his home and also to his tomb where Coretta Scott King also is laid to rest. And so, the first time we took this trip, we didn't realize that we were starting and in Atlanta and kind of following his life, Martin Luther King Jr.'s life unintentionally. And then we are ending in Memphis where he was fatally wounded. And it was just really powerful when we put that together to start and end the trip that way. So it's hard history, it's deep content, and we are working through that with the students now while we're there and when we return. So the students will be leading us through the Martin Luther King Jr. Center. It's a walking tour. They'll be reading to us along the way, and then we'll go to our first hotel. We like to include some pictures. So this is us on, I think, our first trip to the King family home. And here you can see a student reading what she wrote in the journal to other students at the tomb. So already you get a sense of the powerful nature of this trip. So day 2, we are headed to Montgomery. We're going to be in Montgomery for a day and a half. Montgomery has a rich history. There is a time zone change, which works in our favor. So we get to the Rosa Parks Museum. We have some students that will be reading to us when we arrive. We have a group tour there that's going to be guided. They're going to split us into 2 groups. Then we're going to have students leading us using a map and no technology to that we're working on now to a pizza and salad lunch. Following that, we're headed to the first Confederate White House, where Jefferson Davis was actually sworn into office at the beginning of the Civil War. And it's just kind of an interesting museum before the Capitol moved to Richmond. We'll have some time to journal on the lawn, and it's really just a lovely place. And actually the person that's in charge of that museum is from Niskayuna, or he was. And then we're going to make our way to the Dexter Baptist Church. This is always a very memorable experience for our students because it's led by, we call her Miss Wanda. We've met with her twice before in person, and she Zoomed with us last time in 2001 when we couldn't head down. She is engaging. She gets the students singing. She's had students crying. She's just a powerful, moving speaker. Talking about her own life, the civil rights movement, and you know how the march continues on till today. So the students, it's a powerful impact that Ms. Wanda has, and so it was really important last time when we couldn't go down there to have her even on Zoom. From there, we are headed to the Southern Poverty Law Center, which, you know, we have to go through security to enter that building. They are still involved in the civil rights movement, tracking hate crimes, and it brings to the students' attention, you know, that this work is still unfinished, and they're gonna see the guards outside, and they're gonna, you know, it's gonna leave an impact of, you know, why do we have to go through security? Why is this a place where they have to watch out for themselves? There is a beautiful civil rights memorial, so we'll spend some time there. We will then walk to the State Capitol building, which was the conclusion of the Selma to Montgomery March. And it's a beautiful Capitol building with tremendous amount of history. And we'll just spend some time kind of just hanging out on the green and journaling and kind of decompressing all of the information that we took in. And then we're going back to dinner at Jim and Nick's Barbecue. We've been there 2 times before. They have a big room for us, so we'll all sit together, and it's Southern barbecue with vegetarian options. And then we're headed to our hotel in Montgomery. So this is a picture on the top of Dexter Ave Baptist Church where Martin Luther King Jr. Was working during the 1950s and 60s. This is his actual office at the church, which you think that would be in a museum, but that's his actual desk. And then at the Southern Poverty Law Center, you can see the students all gathered around the Civil Rights Memorial. And Elisa has been spearheading day 3. So Elisa, you want to tell us about it?
On Wednesday, we'll start our day having breakfast at our hotel, and then we'll be heading to the Equal Justice Initiative Museum, which is actually 2 museums created by Brian Stevenson of Just Mercy fame. And this museum, I think, is an incredibly powerful experience. It sort of links our history with slavery and the connections to mass incarceration today. And the Equal Justice Initiative created by Brian Stevenson is to end mass incarceration, excessive punishment, and racial inequality. There's also the Lynching Museum, which is an incredibly powerful visual second part of the museum that we will be visiting that day as well. From there, we will do the historic route from Montgomery to Selma. We're having lunch, a box lunch from a small coffee shop in Selma, really trying to support some local businesses, as obviously they've gone through some really difficult times economically with the tornadoes. And we'll get our coffee shop lunch, and then we're going to By the River Center for Humanity for a talk with Joanne Bland, a lifelong civil rights activist and former foot soldier, and we have had the pleasure of visiting with her before. She came into us virtually the last time we did this. She's a very powerful speaker, and she tells us her story and about her experiences then and now with the civil rights movement and the work that she continues to do. We're hopefully going to present a donation to the Foot Soldier Park that she has created, taking money from the coffee house that we just did to bring down and support the work that she's doing for racial equality. And then after that, we're going to do a self-guided walk over the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And we'll have some time in the Selma Interpretive Center afterwards, hopefully to do some journaling and debrief and talk about our day. And then we will be on the bus on the way from Selma to Tupelo with a stop in Tuscaloosa, I think at this point, for dinner. I'm firming up those details now. So it's a full day, but it's a really, really wonderful and powerful day as well.
So go ahead, Elise, you want to describe the pictures?
Being there was incredibly powerful. I've only done this trip one other time before, but being in these historical places that we have studied both in history and talked about in English, I think it's powerful both for the adults and for the students as well to really see this living history.
All right. So on Thursday, the 30th, we are going to start in Tupelo, and we are going to head to our last stop of the journey, which is into Memphis, Tennessee. It's a couple-hour drive where we may have, so our first stop is the legendary Sun Studio recording studio. And a lot of our Memphis, not a lot, but a good chunk of our Memphis time, I'm sorry about my video. A good chunk of our Memphis time is going to be kind of examining the relationship between music and the civil rights movement. And this is an opportunity after, a pretty heavy week, that there will be some music and a little bit of lighter elements as well. So that the Sun Studio we're going to do a tour there, and that's where Jerry Lee Lewis recorded, Johnny Cash recorded there, Elvis recorded there. There's a lot of really cool music history there, as well as examining its music's relationship to the civil rights movement. We're then going to continue to our lunch, which is at Virgo's Rendezvous Barbecue, which will be a relatively quick lunch, but it's going to be it is a Southern barbecue spot, but we're going to be doing a nacho buffet. So students will have their choice of vegetable, pork, or chicken nacho buffet before we continue over to the river and hop onto a boat to do an hour-and-a-half tour of the river. After which we're going to have some time to explore Beale Street. And I'm sorry about that video. We're going to have some time to explore Beale Street and really kind of get a feel for some of the culture there. Beale Street will not be kids let free to roam for that whole time. We will be broken up into advisory groups. So while they will have the opportunity to explore Beale Street and see a lot of the cool stuff there, it's not like they're just running and roaming free. So we will be with as we are their advisors, we will be with our advisees and kind of working with them and keeping them together as we go through that process. And that evening for dinner, we are doing dinner at the Hard Rock Cafe, which is on Beale Street, which I think should be a really positive experience to end that Memphis time.
Okay, the last day, we're ending in Memphis, as I said. We'll have breakfast and finish our packing, getting ready for the airport, finishing any journaling that we have that we're about to speak about. We're ending at the Lorraine Motel, which is also where Martin Luther King Jr. ended his life. It is pretty much a culmination of really what we have seen and learned about through this study and through our trip. And it's very impactful. It's solemn, it's sad. The students will have a time to reflect. We'll have some lunch. And then we're going to end in a fun way by getting back to Beale Street and taking a tour of the Rock and Soul Museum. It's a small museum and it's a short tour, but it gives us something fun to do before we need to head to the airport. We like to get to the airport with plenty of time. It's a small airport, similar in size to Albany, I would say. And we'll find some food for dinner there. Students don't need to worry about money for food. That is all covered in the trip expenses. Elisa, do you want to talk a little about the assignments while we're on the trip?
Yes, we are, asking the students to do some reflective work, both academically and personally, in terms of thinking and reflecting about what it's like for them to be in these historical places, either through artwork or songwriting or poetry creating or expository prose. And we'll be asking them to set some goals for themselves, to reflect on those goals on the trip. And we'll be asking them to make some connections with what they've learned in the classroom and what we're working and learning on the ground. And their journals will be with them every single day. And we'll have some downtime on each day for us to have some time with journals for some self-reflection. And it's going to be, there'll be a culminating project at the end where students are able to, in a multitude of different ways, describe their experience, their overall experience in some form of presentation for a presentation. So hopefully to the larger community, but we're still working on that one.
So each day, the students will have a journal prompt that they can choose in which order they complete them in. These are just some examples. As Elisa said, these opportunities are built into our day. And if a student does not finish up, then there'll be time the next day or maybe on the bus. We have a lot of downtime on the bus to finish them up, or even at the airport.
And I think this is, it's a work in progress, but this is the culminating presentation that we're going to have the students do, sort of pulling it all together. How was the civil rights intercession a key experience in your adolescent Montessori education? From the knowledge that they'll make individually to the social connections to the historical connections. We're really looking forward to what they might put together as a final piece, you know, in terms of how this has impacted them.
So we hope to be able to share that with you all once we return, and the format in which we choose to do so is still under discussion, but there will be some sort of reflection culmination when we return. So we're going to shift gears a bit. Hopefully you are excited as we are about the trip. You can see that it's fantastic, that it's powerful, that it's thoughtful, and that your students are very, very excited to participate in it. And it's normal to be a little nervous as well. But we are a community and we function like a strong community on the trip. So in order to do so, we have to have rules. And we want all of our students to be very aware of the rules before we leave. So we would like you to actually go over these rules at home with your students and actually sign off on this. This is on page 6 of your parent information packet that I sent yesterday. And if you need another copy, that the students will bring home a hard copy. So we just want everyone to, you know, abide by the rules so that we can just have such a wonderful experience, and that we're all taking care of each other and being good representatives of our school, of ourselves, of our families, and of our program. So I'm not going to, you know, read all of the rules, but we're asking the students to conduct themselves as though they were in a school building. Even though we're out in the world. So using grace and courtesy, not running in the hallways, using low voices in public if we're in a restaurant, cleaning up after themselves. We will have cleanup crews each day that are in charge of, you know, sweeping the restaurants. Well, not literally sweeping, but just making sure things are off the floor, the last people off the bus, you know, making sure everything's cleaned up as though we were never there, or even better than we found it. So in all aspects of their conduct, we're asking them to be respectful and supportive of their roommates and their travel companions. You know, you never know what your roommate's going through. They might be missing home. They might not be feeling well. So allowing other people to sleep or giving people the space that they need, and being respectful of one another are all topics that we're going to go over with our students before we go. Over the years, the hotel tends to be like the hot spot of where the activity can really break down sometimes. So, you know, we're at the end of the day and everybody's back and they're excited to be at a hotel with their friends. So that's really where we need to rein it back in and make sure that we're using our best behavior. So we're asking them, number one, they should not be going into anyone else's hotel room for any reason. unless it's a chaperone's room and they need to call home or something, but they shouldn't be visiting each other in the hotel rooms. We were not staying in the room with the students, but we will be nearby. And we spend a lot of time, unfortunately, sitting out in the hallway at night and making sure that people aren't running around or leaving the room. And if we do, encounter any of that type of behavior, we will be calling home, because we do want you to be aware of, what's going on, and so that you could help reinforce proper behavior with the students. We're also asking them, of course, not to bring technology. They can use digital cameras. They can use our phones. Like I said, we're going to be asking them each night to call home if they wish. You can be in contact with us via email or text if you need to. But as Evan said, this is, the objective is that they're gaining some independence and some autonomy and some confidence in their own ability to manage things with support. So it is, it's nice to make contact, but we want you to know how they're doing, but we also want to give them a chance to do it on their own. So no entering other rooms, no calling other rooms. That was a problem, years ago, with them making like little prank calls to each other. So we're just asking them not to call each other unless if they need to use the phone in the room, they could be calling their chaperone. No running around the hotel, no going to the vending machine and getting soda. And I apologize because I keep saying no, no, no. And that's not usually how we phrase things in Montessori. We like to talk about what they should be doing. But I just want to make it very clear that those are the rules, and we're not going to be doing those things.
Cora, can I jump in there for just a quick second?
Yes.
And also to add on to what Cora is saying, if there is downtime in the hotels, we see if we could maybe gather in the lobby for anybody who might like to play card games and Uno, and the kids have researched some games for us to bring. And Bethany has been wonderful about preparing a little packet of fidget toys, so that we have those at our disposal as well. So, if there isn't a lot of downtime on this trip, to be honest, but if there is downtime, we try to work with the students to figure out how they can still meet the rules, but get together socially outside of their rooms, potentially too, or go work out in the gym, that type of thing. Of course, as Cora says, always following the rules that we have, but we work with them.
Awesome, Lisa. Thank you for saying that. So we always ask the front desk, is it okay if we use the breakfast nook to play cards or chess? We call and see if there's pools, and if there are pools that are open, we allow them to go. So we might take a group outside if it's nice out. So we give them options, so they're not in their room all the time. But when it is time to go into the room, we do ask that they stay there. And then of course, we're far away, so it would be really hard to ask a parent to have to come to pick up their child, and we really would not want to have to do that, and we never have had to do that. But anyway, please go over the rules with your children and return that form before that. I think we said the 20th, all the forms are due. Michelle, would you like to go over the COVID policy while we're on these topics?
Yes, sure. Thank you very much, Cora. So we're hoping that this policy ends up being moot and that we really don't need to worry about it, but we have thought through our protocol should someone become infected with COVID during our trip. We are going to ask that each of the children test before arriving at the airport on Monday morning, and we will be sending those test kits home with you in advance. We're also going to be sending a case of tests to our first hotel in Atlanta so that we have tests to take with us on the trip. All of the children will be testing daily so that we can make sure that everyone is healthy. Should someone test positive on the trip, we are going to isolate the individual immediately in a safe location. If that's at the hotel, we will move the other children to a different room, and we'll give that student a room on their own and provide oversight by a Woodland Hill employee. So one of the chaperones will remain nearby. Obviously, we'll contact the parents immediately, and we've figured out a plan that will allow us to provide supervision for that child for about 24 hours. We're hoping that that's adequate time for arrangements to be made for the sick child to be brought home. The parents and guardians, whoever is, responsible for, will contact you right away, obviously, and ask that you make a decision about how you would like to transport the child home. Again, we're going to make every effort to make sure that this isn't something that we're having to worry about on the trip. For that reason, we're asking each of the children to wear, and adults to wear, a high quality mask while on the airplane. We're also planning to do our lunch before and our breakfast before the trip in the airport, so that we're not asking the kids to remove their masks on the plane to eat. And we anticipate that that'll probably be the one place that we have the highest risk of exposure. So coaching your children through being cooperative with the masks would be really appreciated. As was mentioned before, we are looking for outside dining options wherever feasible. And if symptoms develop, we're going to be asking a child to mask, even if the COVID test is negative at that time. If a child is well enough to continue with us and is still continuing to test negative on a COVID test, we won't be asking you to come and get them, but we will be asking them to mask if they have any symptoms that could be associated with COVID. I think that's about it for that part. We can ask questions at the end if you have any.
All right, and I'll take it home here with our last slide before questions. So parental support. I mean, like I said earlier, one of the goals here is to cultivate some independence in our students and a little bit of space from the familiar and doing something new. But that doesn't mean parents don't have a role to play. You absolutely do. So the way we feel that you can best support your student is to start out by going through that packing list with them closely, discussing, ways to pack well, going over what you need, what you don't need. All those sorts of things are helpful to have parents as a sounding board for as our students pack. Reviewing the parent checklist and going through the rules and policies with your student closely. You all have middle schoolers. You all know how closely they may or may not read through certain directions or instructions or written language. So please take the time to go through these rules and policies with your student and discuss them a little bit. See why, try to have that conversation about why some of those rules might be in place and try to explore them a little bit. With the cell phones, I saw one comment in the little chat here about, last year, a lot of students had cell phones. And those students that did bring them, likely their parents knew that they had them on the trip. So I think having a realistic expectation of not bringing those phones and by secretly allowing them to have phones is not really helping your student achieve the goals of what this trip can be. So we're going to take it seriously, and we ask that you all do as well. Cora mentioned, you can use digital cameras, like the old school kind, that it's not a phone, all sorts of stuff like that. We'll have some available as well, a couple for students to use. So taking those rules seriously is a positive thing. Let's see, room assignments and chaperones assigned, sent out the week before the trip. The journals, contact us with any questions or travel concerns that you may have. We know that there are lots of different questions that everybody's got. Your students have them, you have them. So I see there's lots that are coming through in the chat here. So we can continue to address those questions and talk about them. The bottom bullet point here, the forms, all the different forms that are in the parent packet are going to be submitted to the business office. One thing to really pay attention to is that, where does it say there? Get the chat out of the way. That your permission slips do have to be notarized. You can usually do that. I'm sure you all know where you can find a notary, but if you don't, you can usually find them at your local bank, or I believe in a pinch that our business manager may be a notary as well.
Yeah, I was going to say Ashley is a notary.
Yep.
Ashley's a notary, so you can do it right here at the school with Ashley.
Yep. So yeah, I was just trying not to overload her with everybody going to her.
Oh,
so
okay, yeah.
Your local bank's a good place to start, or your own notary. Also, as far as the medical stuff, we do require forms, medical forms for both prescription medicines and for over-the-counter stuff. And I know that doctors' offices can be a little bit busy. So if that's something that you are, if that applies to you, if you're sending your student in with either over-the-counter or prescription stuff, please take the time now early to make a doctor's appointment or reach out to your doctor to see how to go about getting that paperwork done. I know I just talked a lot fast, but that's, we think, great ways that teachers can, or parents can help support your student.
Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. That's all we have for our slideshow. If you would like to revisit the slideshow, you do have a copy of it in your email. I think we have been trying to field a lot of the questions through the chat. Michelle, do you see any questions that are appearing in the chat, or do you want to just take some verbal
Sure,
questions?
I'll go ahead and keep an eye on the chat. In the meantime, if you would like to raise your hand either physically or raise your hand with the little tool in the Zoom meeting, Cora, if you want to call on people who raise their hands. In the meantime, I will answer the question of why the permission form requires notarization. That's something that we've been doing with our permission slips for our major trips for several years. We do have the permission form and all of the forms reviewed by our attorney, who suggests that we have them notarized for extra protection for the school in the event that there is an emergency. Okay, Cora, I see that Jeff has his hand up.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, it sounds amazing. You guys have done an incredible job so far of all the planning, and I'm sure I echo the sentiments of a lot of the parents to say that we are jealous that we're not on this trip. So lucky you guys and lucky our kids. I had a kind of lighthearted question or suggestion. Thinking about Memphis, and Evan, you were talking about the different musicians and the different music that will be part of the experience. Any chance that maybe Iggy or one of you could put together a playlist for the kids of maybe one song a piece of like kind of critical or you know, important pieces of music from the time?
I'll take that, Jeff. Absolutely. As the students right now are starting to put together their writing about the different parts of our trip, they're all kind of dumping that into one big document that will transform into the journal. We're also having them, especially my students, my advisees who are looking into Memphis closer, are taking down songs and artists that they're finding in their research to start building a playlist. So in the same way that we all have music that we would love them to listen to, part of the fun thing is right now, as they're exploring, researching the trip, they're also finding some of this music themselves.
Yep.
If they need some coaxing in the right direction, we'll also help with that.
All right,
That's something
awesome.
that we typically do on the bus. And I remember I chose Walking Through Memphis last time. And Iggy actually has hopes to surprise the students by joining us in Memphis, but don't tell them that, because he may or may not show up there.
Very cool.
There is a question in the chat about general non-COVID illness, such as fever or chills, and how we handle that on the trip.
So Michelle, I think what we do, right, is we do the best we can with these circumstances that we're given. So if a child did not have COVID, we all have all the chaperones have extra beds in our rooms. So we would call the parents first and foremost. We would seek your advice. If we needed to bring them to a medical expert, we would do that. We were going to have at least one car in addition to our bus. And so we would provide space for them to rest, and a chaperone would stay with them. And Michelle, is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I actually think you were the perfect one to answer that, because this has happened. This is something that the teachers have experienced on trips before. And that's when our, our nurturing parenting side of our work kicks in, and we keep them comfortable. We make sure that we're providing opportunity to rest, and hopefully they can recover and be able to stay on the trip with us. Related to this question, there is a question about the medical form and if it needs to be completed for all students or just students who need medication. Cora, am I right in thinking that it's only if they need to have medication that they need to fill out the form?
Yes, that's correct. So if there's no medication required, then there's no form needed, but Evan is going to be keeping track of our medicine. So Evan, do you want to say something about over-the-counter medication?
Yes, absolutely. So in the form in the packet that you've all received, there's basically one sheet that lists, I've got it right here, but it goes through and lists the medication, the times that it can be used, doctor's medical release, all that sort of thing. And if you have more than one prescription medication, we would like a separate piece of paper, separate one of those forms for each of the prescriptions, just so we know dosage, timing, days, all that important information. But with over-the-counter stuff, we feel it's okay that you can make a list on that form, still need the doctor's signature, please and thank you. But you can get all the OTC stuff onto one form, and we think that will be okay. Likewise, I guess I said it a little while earlier, but it does take some time to get into your doctor's office and get some of those documents filled out, which is why we're hoping that everybody can get their medications into us at school by the Thursday before we leave. So that's Thursday, March 23rd. So that gives you 2 weeks from today to get that taken care of. So that is the goal, to have everybody get both their prescription and their over-the-counter stuff documentation into us. Also the physical medication as well. And that way, Thursday is the goal, Friday is the follow-up day. If we still don't have it by the end of Friday, hopefully everyone arrives on Monday with what they still need to give to us. And the purpose of that is to have the teachers responsible for the medications so that your children don't have prescription or over-the-counter drugs in their own possession, unless they have the okay from their doctor for things like EpiPens to self-administer and things like that, which are, exceptions. Does that answer those questions?
I believe so. Nancy, you have a question? I see your hand is up.
Yeah, just quick following up on this medication issue or question, topic, whatever you want to call it. There was some question last year on the Cape Cod trip about just cough drops. I was told medicated cough drops were considered a medication and needed to go with this protocol. There are, of course, unmedicated cough drops, all natural cough drops. What would those be considered?
I think an all natural cough drop is a reasonable thing for them to self-carry. We'll just try to be careful about the fine line between natural cough drops and candy. So just be mindful of that.
Yeah, it's just something that helps Violet with some anxiety issues. She
Sure.
feels more comfortable if she can carry cough drops and have them available to her.
Sure, no problem.
Great.
I see a question here about how will we ensure that everyone is accounted for at all times if someone accidentally gets separated? Did one of the faculty want to take that one?
I'm trying to read the question. So first, we've never had that happen, but we travel as a group, either a large group or in smaller, either thirds or halves. Usually sometimes we break into fourths. So we do buddies. We also do checks throughout, before we move from one part of the museum to the next part of the museum. So the chaperones do more observing of the students than we actually do observing in the museums. So they also will have an index card. I want to add this in their personal day bag, which will have your number just in case they don't have that memorized. But it will also have the chaperone's cell phone numbers, and we will be doing discussions about emergencies. Seek out someone that looks like they might be working at the museum, or someone that you look like you can trust to use their phone. But generally speaking, that wouldn't happen. But if it does, we would have a plan. Michelle, do you want to add on to that? Anything that I missed?
No, I actually think, Cora, that covered it pretty well. One of the things that's great about the kids is that they're super aware of, their group and their peers and their roommates. And as teachers, we have that natural instinct to constantly be doing head counts and, just surveilling the area. It's just something that's very natural to us at this point in our work. So like Cora said, it hasn't happened, and I feel confident that it won't, but we will be sure to be extra vigilant, especially when we're in areas that are more crowded. We've taken the kids on trips to New York City and navigated Times Square with them without losing anyone, so we've got a really great track record. There's another lighter question in the chat from Karen. She's wondering what kind of snacks are popular and how many should they send?
Elisa, do you want to take this one? You have any thoughts on snacks?
Sure. We will ask the students to bring in a healthy snack to donate to the snack fund. That will be one of our packed bags, so that we always have plenty of snacks, nut free, of course, but that are available for the students. We're not going to have to create a deli room in Cora's hotel room for this trip, which is kind of nice, but we will have a designated snack room. So if the kids are hungry, or we're on the bus and we're on our way and they are, feeling peckish, we will have snacks available for them.
So anything that's individually packaged, easy to distribute. They like pretzels, chips, baked chips, or, they like the fruit snack things. I know they're not the best for your teeth, but they like them. So what we usually do is, if we're on a long bus ride, we'll go up and down the aisles like a airline stewardess and pass out the snacks, and then we'll come back with the garbage bag and collect the garbage. So they know that we have a lot of snacks. We actually usually have too many. So at the end of the trip, we're finishing them up, but we'll ask everybody to bring a box of snacks in, and we'll put that in the check bag as you've heard. So whatever they like, they can choose. And please don't let them pack candy. They don't need candy in their rooms, or soda and those sorts of things. They don't need those things in there.
Things with protein are always nice if your child has a particular type of snack bar, like a granola bar, or the fruit and grain bars, something like that might be a good option. The protein always helps too. Mm-hmm. There's a question here about whether or not vitamins are considered over-the-counter medication. I don't know the answer to that. Do any of the other chaperones know?
I would lean on the side of no. Yeah. I know that I get prescription vitamins from my doctor for my children, but that's something that they need to take every day, and there's really no harm in carrying that. What do you think, Michelle?
Yeah, I agree. So there is another question here about how much money, if any, should we send with the kids? That really, we're not there to shop, but there will be opportunities to shop. So it's a hard number. I like to say no more than $50. But there will be students likely that would feel like they need to have a little bit more should they want to buy something more. It's not something that we're going to be checking, so they don't need certainly more than 100, I would say, but 50 seems like a fair number. They're responsible for managing that money, and to keeping track of it. I don't know if any other chaperones, or Michelle, if you have another number in mind. That is actually something we didn't get a chance to talk about. Yeah. We used to say 50, and then we kind of realized that with inflation, sometimes 50 doesn't cut it. And then they're really cute about coming to the chaperones to ask if they can borrow some money. So I think if you can send 50, I think that should suffice. I think anything over 100, they get really anxious to spend it all, so it might get distracting from the mission of the trip. But yeah, just have them have a way to keep track of it and think about making that last. There are opportunities. They'll probably want to bring home some sort of souvenir, and that's all they would need it for. Matthew, I'm fine if you would prefer to have Ariana have a credit card that they can use instead of carrying cash. That's fine too. Elisa has a question here that says, can I ask what you're reading, watching in preparation for the historical and political context of the trip?
So we've been reading, well, they're reading Warriors Don't Cry Upon Their Return. Last time we did this, we had one of the Little Rock Nine actually Zoom in and speak to our class about her experiences integrating Arkansas High School, but we haven't started that yet. We have been using Southern Poverty Law Center curriculum. It's called Teaching Tolerance. I think they renamed it to Learning for Justice, with topics surrounding the Selma Montgomery March and the Civil Rights Movement in general. They're taking a close look at Memphis through a series of links and web quests that we have designed. Anything else that we haven't said, Elisa or Evan?
Well, just for the Memphis Day, one of the big sources they were using is the University of Memphis, which tracks the history of the civil rights movement in Memphis itself, and using that as jumping off point. So that's, yeah, where a lot of the Memphis group is finding their information, as well as videos, specifically Martin Luther King Jr.'s I've Been to the Mountaintops speech on the day before his assassination.
Mm-hmm.
And the week before we go, in ELA, we're going to do just a quick sort of intensive look at Bryan Stevenson, watching his TED Talk, looking at two of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s speeches, hearing them, looking at the message and how that message is also relevant to us today as we get ready for this trip, doing some poetry as well to get us ready to just, you know, get into the right mindset. The other thing I think that's kind of neat for the students is that each day, according to our advising group, we have kids who are sort of hosting a particular part of the trip. So they're doing research. So my group is doing the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and we're doing a little bit of research about Joanne Bland, and they'll introduce our speakers so that they're doing some of that discovery before we even have boots on the ground down there. And it's making it, I think, a little bit more real for them so they know what's coming.
And we are, as you know, Lisa, we're looking for opportunities once we return to speak with contemporary and local leaders that are still engaged in civil rights movement here in Albany, and seeing who we can talk to and where we can go upon our return to realize that this, you know, the work is not over, of course. Thank you for that question, though. Michelle, do you see anything else in the chat? I don't see anyone's hand up at this time.
I saw a couple of things that were answered in print, but the only other question that I don't think we addressed out loud is Brian asked if we have backup chaperones. We had some parents volunteer to be on that list, but we all, yes, we do have people here on campus, faculty and staff members that would love to join us on the trip should one of the chaperones become ill and not be able to attend. But you're still on the list if you raised your hand to help. Okay, I see some thank yous popping up, and it looks like we may be, oh, Portia added here, the Albany City School District is doing some musical performances on the 22nd with the civil rights focus. Oh, that's exciting. Thank you for sharing that, Portia. And if Portia, if you want to send that along to one of us, we can distribute it to the middle school through the email distribution list. Okay, we may be to the end of our meeting. If something comes up after and you would like to reach out, please don't hesitate. Any of us are available and happy to answer your questions.
Well, thank you all. We're looking forward to it. And if your children, I would love to speak with you at home about everything that you learned tonight or today. I know they have a lot of questions and we'll be answering them in due time. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.